Welcome to this video tutorial on how to navigate and interact with Qlik. When you log into Qlik's Hub, you'll be presented with streams that you have access to. And these streams then contain applications that you can open and interact with. Here we have the Qlik demo app stream. As you can see, there are a lot more applications within this stream. When you're in the hub, there are other views that you can manage. You can sort your applications by different properties. You can view them in different ways as well. So by default, we have the grid view. Then we have the sort of table view, along with the list view. Today we're going to be interacting with the People Bank application. And before we open this application, there's also some extra properties that we can navigate to in the hub. When you hover on top of an application, you'll see a details icon. You can click on that icon, and what it will tell you is when the data was last reloaded, when was it published, created, along with other metadata available, and the description. You can go ahead and open the application from this pop-up window, or we can actually just click on the logo to open up the application. Once the application is open, you're presented with the app overview, where you see some of the same information that we saw with the details view, along with some other assets that we're going to talk about now. Let's start with the tab here in the middle. So by default, it's selected on the Sheets section here, where we'll see Public Sheets and My Sheets. So Public Sheets are available to everyone. Everyone can view them and interact with them. My Sheets is your own personal workspace, where you can either duplicate or create a new sheet. And after you've actually created your own sheet, you can publish your sheet into a sort of secondary stream where people can view that and then further be published into the Public Sheets section. Along with the sheets, we have bookmarks, where if there are any bookmarks that have been created or created by you that's available, you can interact with them here, along with stories. If we go back to the sheet section here, on the right hand side, we have also create new sheet, which will then add it to the My Sheets section, and also just a grid and a list view of the actual sheets. Let's go ahead and jump into the dashboard. Let's go ahead and have a look at the top row. In the top left, we have a drop down with App Overview and Open Hub, where you can navigate to those. Wherever you see this icon, it means that you can pop it out into a new tab. And along with that, we have the download sheet as PDF and also duplicate sheet. In the middle, we have our sheet analysis that we're looking at currently, and we can also navigate to insights. Next to sheets, we have storytelling, where we can actually go view any stories that have been created or create new stories. To the right, we have bookmarks, where we can create bookmarks and view any previously created ones. And as the same as on the left hand, we have duplicate, so we can actually duplicate this sheet for self-service purposes. And we also have our sheet navigation drop-down, where when clicked, will be presented by any sheets that are available to us. Lastly, we have the forward and the back arrow to navigate the sheets. Let's go ahead and move on to the actual strengths of Qlik, or Qlik itself. So Qlik obviously has an amazing engine behind it in its technology. And with that engine comes data association. And the biggest part about data association that Qlik has brought in is something that they call the green, white, and gray. With the introduction of Qlik, there was another term called light gray that was brought in. But what that in essence means is when you're actually selecting an item, white means available to your selection and your analysis, and it's a part of your analysis. Green means that you've selected an item and that is now purely a part of your analysis, and everything else is filtered according to that selection that you've made. Gray is outside of your analysis. So these are not a part of your selections or your view that you're seeing at this current moment. You can go ahead and increase your selections that you want, approve them, and now we're purely looking at those 3 years, for example. So this is that green, white, and gray. If I move over to another filter pane, there we'll see that based on my selections that I've made, these are the months that are available in my selection, along with everything else. If we go and talk about selections a little bit more, let's start off with the different types of selections that you can make, or with different objects that you can interact. The first and most common one being the filter pane, which is what you see in majority here in the top and on the left. And if they are minimized, you can click them and you'll get a drop down of the available fields that can be selected. When I make a selection, my data changes according to the data that's associated within that selection. I can go over to my year, pick a year, and so on and so forth until I've met my actual analysis criteria that I'm looking for. Other ways to select is within the objects themselves. There are certain objects that allow you to actually make selections. A dial is not one, and a KPI is not another. But if we look at this pie chart, we can actually select the individual segments themselves. So if I wanted to analyze this information by pension payment, household, and bank fees, I can just go ahead and make those selections. Once I've made the selections in my chart, you would have seen that the data changes in the background, but obviously the chart is not selected itself. I can go ahead and accept those, and my view will change. If we move over to the next sheet, our analysis sheet, there's some other objects that we can interact with. Here we have a line graph where we can make 2 different types of selections. So with my mouse cursor at the bottom of the axis here, I can actually highlight these years that I want selected using a click and drag approach. I can also select on the left axis here by using the same method, clicking and dragging and choosing my actual value points that I want to include in my selection. Once I've made those, I can go ahead and hit accept, and those are now part of my selection. On a bar graph, we can kind of do the same, so we can also use the same scrubbing method. But we can also select and click on these individual bars themselves. If we have a look at the scatter plot, we're introduced with another method of selection capabilities. I can also drag around and pan the actual view to see. If I've gone a bit too far and I want to center it back, I can always hit the home button, which will take me back to the original view. If I click on the object, I'm also presented with a new type of selection, this lasso. If I go ahead and click the lasso, what that allows me to do is click, drag, so I can now draw a circle around the data that I actually want to select. Not only can I use the lasso method, I can also use the click method, so I can actually click on a data point to include that in my analysis and then accept those selections. If we have a look at the top of our page, you'll see a selections toolbar. At the moment, we have no selections applied, but let's go have a look at the buttons to the left of it. So what we have is we start off with the smart search, or this sort of global search. What that allows me to do is I can now search for any type of field inside my data itself. For example, if I'm looking for a particular gender, so let's say I'm looking for female. As I start typing, it'll start recommending different fields that are available to me. Once I've found what I'm looking for, I can go ahead and make that selection, and my data will obviously filter accordingly. We have the back button, so this actually just steps one selection backwards, so to the state where we had no selections applied. We have the forward button, which just reapplies any selections that we removed previously or stepped back on. And then lastly, we have the clear all selections. Let's go ahead, make some selections. So I'm going to choose a certain type. Look at my year. What filter panes also allow me to do is there's a search in list box. So I can obviously type via text to search what I'm looking for, but I can also put formulas in. So let's say I want any years that are greater than 2014. I can literally say greater than 2014, and that'll immediately present me with 2015 and 2016. I can hit enter to accept, and those selections are now made. If I don't want a certain selection, for example, withdrawal in the top here that's been selected, I can clear it. I can also click on transaction type to get that drop down again and choose a separate one. Or I can go ahead and clear the selection completely for that particular transaction type. If I move down to transaction description, for example, we can also do wildcard searches on text. So if I start my search off with 2 asterisks, in the middle, I want to look for all available fields that have the word withdrawal in it. So I can start typing withdrawal, and there I'll have my 2 field items available. Hit enter, and they're now part of my selection. Let's say I want to inverse my selections. I'm happy with the years that I've selected because I'm analyzing the 2 latest years, but I want to see what's the impact of all the other transaction description types. What we have is any filter pane or selection item dropdown. There's the triple dot. When you click that, you're presented with other options. One of those options is then select excluded. It'll go ahead and inverse my selection. I can accept that, make my analysis, and then continue on. If I want to lock particular selections, so for example, I always want to analyze my data by these 2 years, I can go ahead and use the lock button in the top left corner. Now, whenever I clear my selections, the 2 years will always be selected regardless. If I want to clear that lock, I just click on the selection and click to unlock. And I can go ahead and clear those selections from there. If we're not too familiar with the data that we're looking at currently, we can also use the selections button over here to the right to actually do some further analysis on our dimensions that's available. What we're presented with at the bottom here is immediately a list of dimensions that are available as part of our master dimensions. Okay. If there is a dimension that isn't a part of this list, you can also search for them. So let's go ahead and make some selections. So I'm looking for the year dimension, so I can search for it here. I'm going to go and pick 2016. Clear that. Next, I want to see where the credit card type is gold. And then lastly, I want to analyze my dimension province, but I want to make a selection of Gauteng. With those 3 selections in mind, I now have the option to generate some insights around these selections. So let's go ahead and generate insights. It will go and analyze the information that's in these fields and look at all the other information that's available in my application. If you have master items, master dimensions, master measures, things like that, it will also now bring them into the insights section as well. So what we can see is the insights that are being generated are based on a measure that's a part of our master library. And out of the master library, it's using total balances as the measure. From that, we can see that based on our selections, that it only accounts for 0.1% of the total balances in the entire application. If we scroll down a little bit, we can see that our year selection excludes 90% of the date selections available, and also excludes 73% of the total balances. Let's go into this actual dimension here and click it. The extra information we'll see which still follows the green, white, and gray premises. Gray is excluded from our selections, so 73% of this information, and white is included in our selection, so possible values, so 26%. Once we've finished with our insights and our analysis here, let's go back to the actual sheet. Sticking with the theme of selections, let's move over to bookmarks. So bookmarks are an extremely handy feature where you find yourself opening a specific application on a daily basis or however often that it is, and you make the same selections every single time. So instead of making those selections over and over again, or even finding a particular selection grouping that is of great interest, that's where the bookmarks come into play. So for example, every morning when I come in here and open up the application, I select 2016, I select the transaction type, a transaction description, and then lastly, a transaction status. These are my selections that I make every single time I open up this application. So instead of having to do that every time I open, I can go over to bookmarks and I can create a new bookmark. It'll ask for a title, which I'll call my daily selections. You can give a description, and as well, you can save the sheet location. So in other words, it only applies to the dashboard sheet, or you can actually apply it to the entire application. Doesn't matter, it'll just, if you choose the bookmark, it'll take you automatically to the dashboard. This way, it'll apply the bookmark no matter what sheet you're on. And then you can save any layout changes that you've made as well. Go ahead and create this bookmark. Immediately I get a little bit of information around it, lets me know where the location is, the dimensions that were chosen, and then the actual selection criteria that's available here. So now if I go ahead and clear the selections, I can navigate over to bookmarks, apply my new bookmark, and there we go. Let's have a look at some of the self-service capabilities of Qlik Sense. So providing that you have the correct license assigned to you, you will then have this duplicate option available, or as we've seen before, the create new sheet button as well. Let's say that I'm happy with most of the items that are available on my analysis sheet, but I want to make changes to my visualizations. So I can go ahead and duplicate this sheet. Once I hit the duplicate button, it'll go and make a copy, and it'll go and place it in the My Sheets section. It'll rename it for us, so just Analysis 1. We can change the name if we want, but let's leave it as is for now. Let's start off with some of the self-service capabilities. The first main one is what we call the master items. And what the master items are is a governed library of dimensions, measures, and visualizations that have been pre-created by the developer that conform to the organization's standards. If I have a look at the measures themselves, I can actually go and click on one. I'll get the name, the description, and what is the measure actually doing. So let's say, for example, this line chart over here, which measures total transactions per year. Okay? I'm not so interested in that. I actually want to know the growth of accounts over the years. So I've got a measure here, number of accounts. I can drag, drop that there, and I can now say I can either add it as an extra measure, or I can say replace number of transactions. Once I've done that, my analysis will change. If I don't like certain objects, I can go ahead, right click and delete them. I can drag in measures themselves. So I can say if I'm looking for the number of clients, Qlik will then use its insights engine or its cognitive capability and generate a chart based on the data that's available. It'll tell me that it's a chart suggestion, which I can turn off and modify myself, but also I can change the different sort of objects that's available based on what's being used. So these are the suggestions. If I now go and add a dimension, so for example, if I want to see number of clients by province, my analysis will change. And once again, I can go have a look at the different objects that are available and that the system is suggesting to me. And here I'm going to go and choose the tree map. Perfect. That's exactly what I'm looking for. Just resize it and I'm good to go. Let's say I'm stuck with my analytics and I'm not too sure what else is available to me. What we can do is we can head over to the Insights tab. And what the Insights tab will do is it will actually go and analyze all the data in the application, all the master dimensions and measures available, and actually generate insights based off of that information. So straight away I can see total transactions, total balances by town. I can see some geographical information with balances. See some bar charts, some tree maps. Let's say I like the information that's here on the total balances by town and province. I can select that. It'll tell me what it's made up of, and I can also go and change the different sort of visualizations that's available. Here's the perfect one for this one. So I'm going to go ahead and pick the distribution plot. Yep, that's exactly the analysis that I need. There afterwards, I can go and add it to sheet, and immediately it'll know what sheets I have available. So I can either add it to my existing analysis sheet, or I can go ahead and create a new one. I'm going to go add it to the existing one. Okay, let's add it to the sheet. Not only can I generate insights based on the different measures and dimensions available, I can also go ahead and ask Qlik a question. And what I'm looking for is the total balances for 2016 by province. If I hit enter, it'll analyze the information that I've actually given it, and using its natural language query engine, it'll break down the different assets that's available in my question. If I actually want to go and see what's made up of this, I can click the eye icon and it'll tell me that it's understood total balances as a measure and it's a master measure. It's understood my query of 2016, it sees that it's a year and that there's dates available between that year. And then lastly, I want it to actually be broken down by province, so it sees that my master dimension of province as well is included. And from that, I get generated now insights based off of my query. We get some other great information that we can see that the total balance between the period was 13 billion. We can see what month there was the maximum and what month there was the minimum. So I'm happy with this object that it's created for me. So I'm going to go ahead and add that to my sheet. To navigate back to my sheet, all I need to do is just click the drop down by Analyze and go back to Sheet. And there we go. It's placed my two new objects here. So I can go ahead and resize these. So I can make my distribution plot a little bit smaller and then my line chart a little bit bigger. There we go. Now I'm happy with my analysis. This is great for me. If the analysis that I've created is proving to be useful for other users, I can actually go ahead and publish this. So either from the app overview or from the Sheets dropdown, I can right click on my sheet and I can say publish. It'll let me know that you're about to publish this sheet to the PeopleBank community. and click Publish to make the sheet available to other users. Once you click Publish, you'll see that the Edit button is now changed into the Duplicate button, because it is no longer part of my sheets. It has now been published by me and available for everyone else to analyze. If I need to make changes to my sheet later on, I can right-click on it and I can say Unpublish, and it'll become again a part of my sheets. I can also duplicate it to make a copy if I want to as well, to make maybe some other changes, and then publish that. Lastly, let's move over to stories. What stories are a collection of different assets within your QlikSense application, and then put into a PPT type report that can be shared with other people and also printed as well for exporting capabilities. So for example, either you need to create a monthly report that needs to be demonstrated in a meeting and that, or you've just found some really interesting insights that you want to share with everyone else. Stories also take your selections into consideration, and there are also a number of other elements that you can use when actually designing your stories. So I'm going to go ahead and make some selections. So let's say I'm generating a report for the current month. And let's say I'm also doing some additional analysis where the account types are business accounts. Okay, this is now the information I need for my month-end report. So I'm going to go ahead and grab these dials and the KPIs. They're going to be added to my report, along with another object from the analysis sheet. When you hover over an object and you want it to be part of your story, you need to take a snapshot. In order to take a snapshot, you hover on top of it, you get the triple dot, and there afterwards you get the take snapshot option. You can add a description if you want, but I'm just going to go ahead and hit save. I'm going to go and do this for the rest of the objects. Let's go over to the analysis sheet and grab an object from there. I want this total transactions via EFTs. This information is perfect for me. Just to take a moment and explain some of the extra properties that are available with this triple dot pop out. So we can make an object full screen. I can interact with it. I can then minimize it again. I can use the exploration menu, so if there's different dimensions and measures that I can switch between. I can view the actual data as well. I could share this. Can take the snapshot. I can see any previous snapshots that might have been taken of this. And then also I can download. So I can download as an image, a PDF, and then an Excel data CSV export. I'm going to go ahead and take my snapshot. With all my snapshots taken, I'm going to go ahead now and create my story. To do that, I navigate over to storytelling. And because there are no stories available, immediately I'm presented with a blank story that I can now start with. Go a little bit of the navigation properties. On the left-hand side, we have the sheets. Big plus button at the bottom that allows us to add sheets. We can right-click and delete or duplicate. When on a sheet, we've got our different properties as well. First one being our snapshot library, text objects, shapes, any effects that we want to apply, any pictures that we might have, and then lastly, we actually want to embed an entire sheet from the application. So I'm going to go ahead and add my different snapshot library items. But first, I want to add a title. My monthly report. There's some extra editing capabilities. I can change the color of the font. I can change the type. And then do I want to add any links to this as well? With my snapshot library, once I click that, these are my available ones that I've taken. from newest to oldest. So I'm going to go ahead and now construct my report. There we go. I'm happy with my initial page of my report. But I also want to embed the dashboard sheet so that we can actually do some further investigation as well. So with that, I can use my sheet library. I can click on the dashboard, and now the dashboard is added as an extra sheet to my story. With my story completed, it is saved for me automatically. I can go ahead and hit play. And just like any PowerPoint report, you've got the navigation below to go backwards and forwards. You can use your keyboard arrows as well. And then also you can export the story to either PowerPoint or PDF. As you're talking about your story and any sort of insights that you might have found, you can actually right-click on the object and say go to source. It'll open up the sheet, highlight the object in question, and also remember your selections that you made when you actually took the snapshot. Have your discussion around that information, and then just go back to your story. Let's go and navigate over to the second sheet. And here's that live view of our dashboard. We can actually go and make selections on this particular story here. I can reset those selections, and then I can actually go back to the sheet as well if I want to interact with it. When I'm done with my story, I can hit close, and then I can just navigate back to Sheets. And now that is all for this tutorial. Happy clicking!